Hello? This is your 5:30 wake up? I know it's been a long day, but today we're going to go over default theme implementations. This session is for module developers that want to learn how to make their modules work better with the theme system and in a way that won't get, that will make Morton and myself extremely happy. So. If I can get this working. And I guess I'm just going to press the space button. So, a little bit about me. I'm John Albin. My last name is actually Wilkins. Albin is my middle name, but it doesn't matter. And apparently I just discovered earlier today that me and 19 other people wrote 50% of Drupal 7. What we're going to talk about today is this is sort of the bullet points in case you're in the wrong session. We're going to talk about a brief overview of the theme layer. Then we're going to talk about theme hook suggestions and best practices for building your own implementations. So, if this sounds like something you want to listen to, feel free to stay. Otherwise, the door's right over there. Separation of concerns. So like all good developers, you love separation of layers, right? You've got, your business logic and your display logic, and you want to keep those separated. In Drupal, we do that with the theme layer, but it's not a clean separation as far as where you put your functions and where you put these different things. It's not like it's the theme that's in charge of the theme layer and it's the module in charge of the business logic. The module, because it's providing the data, it makes the most sense for the module to actually provide the default theming of that data. I mean, that's what makes most sense. So there's actually a little bit of the theme layer in the module. It's encapsulated, but it's still inside, the module namespace here. So we have our data going through the business logic of the module, and then it goes into the default theme implementation, and then it'll continue on to the theme layer, and the theme can add additional styling and markup, and then it continues on to the web browser, right? Well, the theme can provide an override of that implementation. So if the theme provides one, it'll be used instead of the modules. And this provides, really, really powerful theme and module integration that other systems don't have. For example, from what I understand about Joomla, if you install a new module, sometimes you have to take like a little code snippet and paste it into your theme in order to get that functionality into your site. With this, our themes don't have to know about how views works, how CCK works, how all these other 6,400 different modules that are on Drupal.org now. That would just be insane if a theme tried to support all of those. So with this, the way this mechanism works, we relieve a lot of the burden off of the themes. This is a basic flow of theme content. Actually, maybe I should give, how many people here have developed module, or how many people here are still learning module development at this point? Okay, excellent. So this is good slide. I just want to make sure, because I just saw Larry walk in here, Larry Krell. Wanted to know my audience. So the way that Drupal works as far as how all these different pieces work is basically we have each little piece of data is themed separately and then sort of aggregated together with other pieces of data and sort of becomes a sort of snowball of themed content until you have the page completed. So for example here, the comment module will provide the comment data, and it gets themed by the default comment implementation, which is a template. And though each of those comments will be themed individually, then wrapped together and sent off to the comment wrapper theming, which adds an additional div, and there'll be like a title there, and it wraps that up and passes on to the node theming. Those things will actually become a variable in the node TPL, and be aggregated again together with like fields and node links and blocks the same way into regions and nodes into the page, again themes, set off. In D7, there's an HTML TPL as well, and then onto the browser. So this is sort of the flow of how the different parts of your data get themed together and sent on to the client. In D7, this is sort of the overview of how the theme system works. You don't have to learn all these bits. In fact, I was at the Core Dev Summit and presented this slide and asked the 200 or so people that were there, and I said, how many people know all these different parts? And there were about 5 people, and I was shocked it was that many. It's a big system. It's gotten complex over the years. But I won't be able to go over all these different parts. I wish I could, because that would mean there would be that many more people who can help me do patches. But we're going to cover parts of this today. The first thing we're going to talk about are theme hooks. So you have this piece of data, and you want to theme it. And the way that Drupal does that theming of that data is by specifying sort of a label that says, okay, I've got this data, and I want to theme it in a certain way, and the way that I want to theme it is, sort of called using this theme hook, this label. So I've got it. I've got a user count object. I'm going to call it username theme hook and apply the username theming styles onto it. And the way you do that is with the theme function here. So for example, here, and the curly quotes, because I was too lazy to actually go in and fix it in single regular non-curly quotes. But don't do that in your own code, of course. Theme, and then the theme hook name, and then you pass in your data as variables here. So the theme hook names are often used as function names as well. So the regular PHP naming conventions as far as what are valid function names also apply to valid theme hook names. So you can't use dashes, can't use any spaces. We recommend, and use in core, all under lowercase words and underscores. So the first thing that I'm going to say is when you're building your own module, be lazy. I hope that all of you here are excited that one of the first slides here is telling you to be lazy. Here's a link down here to all of the theme hooks in Drupal 7. There's a corresponding one for Drupal 6 as well. Go in there, sort of familiarize yourself with all of the different things. I've listed here my top 10 +1 theme hooks that are particularly useful in a sort of generalized way. Some of course theme hooks, of course, are very specific. They're like theming a particular form, so you obviously can't really reuse those. But some of these things are really useful, and you should absolutely reuse a theme hook if you can. So if you have, for example, a user that you're wanting to display in some context, first theme it using the username theme hook, right? Theme links here. This is one of the most popular theme hooks that's used throughout Drupal, both inside core and also outside of core in lots of contrib places. And D7 also has image and image styles. Again, this is a list of D7 stuff, but there's a corresponding sort of set of really useful D6 theme hooks as well. So what are the advantages of laziness besides not doing proper spelling? There's less work. Yeah. So one of the things you have to do when you build your own is to create a hook theme function. You have to create a template or a theme function that implements the actual theming, wraps your data with the actual HTML. There is no template preprocess hook. There's none of this stuff. So when you reuse the theme hook, there's just this. Theme hook, and then you pass in the variables. Go and look at the documentation for the theme hook that you want, and it'll explain what are the variables, this data that you need to pass. This is basically an array, a keyed array with the individual variables that need to be passed to the theme hook. I just went in like a week and a half ago and made sure that Drupal 7 has all of its theme hooks properly documented and actually explain what you need to do to pass it in. So please use the API documentation. That's what it's there for. So thank you. And I'm not done yet. I still got a whole bunch more API documentation that I need to do. But it's a damn good start. So another advantage is that themers already know about these theme hooks, right? And in fact, because they're in core or a popular contrib module, they oftentimes will use them in their themes. So if you reuse those theme hooks, your module sort of automatically gets styled the cool way that theme implements that theme hook. So this is great, and then it also means that the themers don't have to learn how to theme your module. And here's another thing that a lot of times people don't realize is going on. You have instant integration with other modules. In Drupal, there's a lot of magic that happens when the theme function is called. The way that it starts off here is basically the theme function will look for the actual implementation. It has a theme registry which stores everything there is to know about a particular theme hook. And basically, it'll start off and say, okay, is this theme hook implemented as a theme function, or is it implemented as a template? And if you've done sort of any level of work with Drupal, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of functions called theme underscore username, and that's the default implementation for the username theme hook. So when you call the theme function with username as the first parameter, it'll go in and discover that the default implementation is actually this function called theme underscore username, and it'll call that. Now the advantage of why it's sort of doing this sort of indirection is because it can control the flow much better. Because another thing that it does, besides just going ahead and calling theme underscore username, is it allows other modules to modify these variables, modify these parameters before theme underscore username is actually called. And this provides some superior integration between modules because they can go and modify how other module displays its own data. So when you reuse these theme hooks, you get instant integration with these modules that happen to be modifying this particular theme hook. And when I implemented the menu block module, which I always like to pimp because not a lot of people know about it, I reused Core's theming hooks for the menu tree stuff. And when I did that, I discovered that there was this other module that I didn't even know anything about called DHTML menu that did this sort of expandable trees where you would be able to click on pluses and minuses and expand out the tree and sort of in an Ajaxy sort of way, or not Ajaxy, just JavaScripty dynamic sort of way. And even though I didn't know anything about it and I hadn't been trying to integrate it with that, and this other module developer hadn't been trying to integrate with my module, they immediately started working together because we were both using the same theme hooks. We were both targeting the same theme hooks. So this was a huge win. Oh, by the way, I should point out that if at any time you want to ask me a question, please do. Just raise your hand, because I don't mind. So one of the other things that you'll want to do when you start reusing theme hooks is besides just reusing the theme hooks, you can use this idea called theme hook suggestions. This is what it's called in D7, and it's actually in Drupal 6 as well. This was this really cool thing that Earl put into Drupal 6 when he rewrote the theme layer, and he said, "Trust me, I need this for views." And everyone was like, "Okay, sure." But nobody figured out actually what was going on until like 6 months ago, basically. And everyone was like, "Oh, cool! That's what views has been doing the last 2 years." So the normal way that I said that you call a theme hook is just the theme function. First parameter is the name of the theme hook, and then you pass on the variables. With a theme hook suggestion, you're passing in this suggestion as well. So you're saying, for example, that in D7 the node module uses the links theme hook quite a bit, and when it adds its read more link, it now does a suggestion of links _ node is a suggestion that it provides. And all that does is it tells this theme system, you know what, go and look at the theme and see if they've implemented, instead of just a default sort of theme links override, see if they've implemented a theme links _ node implementation. And if they haven't, then we'll use the default one that we always use. But if they have, we're going to use this special case suggestion instead of the default. So what this does is provides context, basically, based on the name of the theme hook. So one problem with theme links is it's great to reuse it, but the problem is if you wanted to style the read more link specially and different than all the 80 other places that theme links is used, it's really hard. Or without these suggestions, because if you just override theme links in your theme, you override theme links for all occurrences of theme links everywhere in every module. So just trying to do it just for the read more link is impossible without this theme hook suggestion. So when you reuse a theme hook, make sure that you give a theme hook suggestion. Now, you'll notice here that this says D7 only. But there's also a sort of more advanced way here that uses an array, and that's in both D6 and D7. And basically, instead of passing a hook _ suggestion, you would pass an array with each of your suggestions. So you would have to pass an array that says hook _ suggestion, and then also just hook as your array. And the reason for that is when it's given an array, it doesn't know to sort of cut off the end and look at the just sort of base part of that string. But when you're given just a string, it will start cutting off the ends based on this double underscore pattern. So rolling your own. When you create your own theme function, or when you create your own theme hook, the first thing that you need to do is create a hook theme function which describes all your theme hooks, which is, granted, is a little bit of a WTF. And it's one of those sort of naming conventions that I would like to get changed for D8, just because it is so silly. But the hook theme function, and you can find documentation for this online under all of api.drupal.org's hook. There's a special section there just for hooks, and hook theme is one of them. You'll find the documentation for it, and inside that hook theme, you should just, of course, list the theme hook that you're trying to implement in your function, and then define the default variables, and also define their default values. So when you do that, the theme system knows that I'm sort of expecting these variables, and these are the default values, and I'll use those unless I'm given different values when theme is actually called. Now, a lot of people have questions about what kind of, how should I actually implement this particular theme hook? And in Drupal, we have two different options. You have a theme function that you can create, or a template. I hope that you're all familiar with templates, because I'm not really going to cover this distinction much at all. But when the theme function is called, it'll look, of course, in the theme registry. The theme. Okay, hook theme describes all the theme hooks. When the theme registry is built, it'll go in and call every single theme hook for every single module and build up this giant table of all of the theme hooks and all of their default values and default variables. And when the theme function is called for a particular theme hook, it will go and look in the theme registry to find sort of this data, and it's a lot faster for performance because it doesn't have to go and sort of auto-discover this on every single page call and every single function call of theme. So the theme registry is extremely useful, and the theme function will look and see how is this actual theme hook implemented. Is it a .tpl file? So, for example, the node module has a node.tpl.php, which is just a simple HTML file with a couple of little PHP snippets in there that say, print this variable, print that variable. And then a theme function is your alternate. So instead of a node TPL, you could have, and in fact, in like Drupal 4.6, I think, there was a theme underscore node function, which basically did the same thing, except it did it as a function. So it would take your data and sort of wrap it in different pieces of strings and then return that whole thing. So those are basically your two options. You can either implement it as a theme or implement it as a template file. And the trade-offs are basically the functions are much faster. The overhead of basically taking this TPL file, pulling it in, you have to use some PHP functions to sort of print it out into an output buffer and then capture the output buffer and then stick it back into a variable so you can give it off to some other theme function later or some other part of the system and return it. That's quite a bit of overhead. So templates are slower, but they're a lot easier for themers to sort of be able to override and sort of figure out what's going on. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, what? Does it get cached? The templates? No. It doesn't get cached. And that's something that we can sort of look at, I guess, but no, we don't currently do that. Inside so inside the node module, so your module/nodes, you're going to find, along with the node.module file, there's going to be a node.tpl.php. And so when you call theme, and then pass node as the first parameter and then the actual data, the theme function will actually go in and grab the node TPL file, sort of load it up and print it out into this sort of PHP output buffer. And that's how it captures the whole thing and then stores it and returns it. So. Well, when PHP reads in a file, there's some overhead for loading that file, but Where'd Larry go? Oh, there he is. Is there performance hit for loading it each time node is called, or is it because it's read it once? Yeah, I mean, is it reading it off a disk each time node theme is called, or theme node is called? It's a good question. We're not sure. Yeah. So PHP, from the PHP guru here, we believe that it's sort of, when it reads it the first time, it gets stored sort of in an opcode cache of all that stuff, and it doesn't have to read it off disk. We think. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. That's an awfully good question. Thank you. Obviously, we need to look at that a little closer. Or at least, validate our assumptions here. So the templates are a lot easier, but there are some things that get called like all the time, and we simply don't want to have TPLs for them because it would just ruin performance. And what's a good example of this? That's something that's run. Theme menu links are called because you have like a giant tree of stuff, and you're just calling a template file for every single time that you had a theme link would just be crazy. So we don't. And you should sort of follow sort of Core's guidelines, or Core's sort of examples, I should say, about picking the two. So when you're building your theme function or your TPL file, you should again think about sort of separation of layers, because data should always be passed as parameters into the theme function, right? Because you don't want, and actually I should go through those. Display options should be either parameters or preprocessed functions. Preprocessed functions, which I haven't really mentioned here yet. How many people here don't know about preprocessed functions in Drupal? Okay. So I'm glad that most people know about it. But preprocessed functions, these are the special functions that allow, the primary use of it is it allows other modules to modify the variables before the actual theme function or the actual TPL file is called. So you call theme function with a particular theme hook, and then like all of the preprocessed functions are run to modify the data, modify the variables and stuff, and then the actual implementation is called. So preprocessed functions are run sort of right in between there. And as a creator of a theme hook, you can also have a special preprocessed function called the, let's say you're going to create the foobar theme hook. So you would, obviously your module would create a hook theme which describes the foobar and all of its, all of its variables, and then you would be able to also create a default, you'd be able to create a preprocessed function that's guaranteed to run first before any other module's preprocessed functions by calling it template underscore preprocess underscore foobar. If you read the documentation for the theme function, it describes exactly how you do this. It describes the template underscore preprocess underscore theme hook name. And so when your display options are basically, they're sort of basically variables. Sometimes they're Booleans that say, we've got some sort of wiggle room as far as how we're actually going to style this kind of data, and I want to give you the option of doing this or doing that based on this one variable, right? So that's what I mean by display options here. Those should also be passed into parameters, or you should create them inside your template underscore preprocess underscore whatever your theme hook is function. Again, metadata is the same thing. Metadata should always be modifiable by other modules or the themes preprocess functions, because those themes also get their own set of preprocess functions. So you should try to make most of your data modifiable by preprocess functions. And this is extremely important because otherwise I will get mad at you. Never, ever, ever pull data from inside a theme function. If you have to call a function in order to get a value, don't put it inside your theme function. And the reason for this is don't be like D6's theme local menus. Theme local menus is a theme function that takes no parameters at all. And then it calls two functions which query the database and get a whole bunch of stuff. And then it adds some markup around it and returns it. And this theme function this makes me so angry. There's no way for other modules to modify anything about this theme function. They can't, like add an additional piece of data. They can't, change the way that it's displayed slightly. The only way they can change this is using this hook theme registry alter function, which allows them to go into the internals of the theme registry and yank out the original theme function and replace it with their own. Okay. Now, what this ends up happening is that the theme function, the theme thinks, oh, you know what? I need to modify this output a little bit too because I need to change sort of the HTML a little bit, right? And the only way it can do that is by creating a theme override which replaces the original. And it's, the theme's like, oh, this is sweet. I'm going to go in and modify this exact theme function. This is going to be awesome. And they just sort of discover that they've had an accidental three-way, basically. They thought they were getting on with one person and ended up with somebody else, and there was this whole mess. And you should always avoid accidental three-ways because it's likely you won't get what you were expecting. One of the things that I mentioned this briefly before, but I want to give it a whole nother slide, is provide context. Metadata is just as important as the actual data. If a themer sees a particular theme hook and it happens to be reused a lot, which is great, again, it needs to have some context of knowing what kind of data is this actually that I'm doing? This might be slightly different than this other one because I need to know the sort of subtle differentiation between this other, call of the same theme hook. Give me some metadata so that I can have some context and I can do things based on that context, right? So in the menu block module that I created, I provide boatloads of metadata because I'm just like, what the hell? So, for example, the menu block module basically creates a tree of all the different menu items in a particular menu. So some of the metadata that it provides is the name of the menu, the actual block ID for the actual block ID for this particular call of the menu block. And that extra sort of metadata allows a themer to go in, okay, I just want to theme this one block differently than all these other blocks. And because of the metadata, you can sort of look at that and then implement specific styling for this as compared to that, and it becomes much simpler. So always try to provide context. Now, I wish I could say more about this, markup in CSS, because this is a huge issue, and because module developers, obviously you guys know HTML. That's great. Themers are really anal about their HTML, and it causes a lot of friction. All I can say is, do your best. As long as you try, we're going to be a lot more sympathetic. And when I say we're going to be a lot more sympathetic, I'm kind of straddling the fence. I'm both a module developer and also a themer. But I can understand both sides of that fence. So less is more. Try not to go crazy with the number of divs that you have in there. One thing that you can provide is maybe leaner HTML, but make sure that you have contextual CSS classes. So this is sort of metadata inside a class name, and you can have multiple classes for a single div. So you should use that ability of CSS to have multiple classes for a single div, because you can sort of provide additional sort of context at the CSS level then. So people know that they're styling, a menu block, but they also know they're styling the menu block for this particular menu. That's useful. You can have leaner HTML by providing more CSS classes. And there's still going to be some themers who might go a little apeshit about this. Well, I'm trying to get them to understand, contextual CSS, because it means less work for them. But they like doing lots of work, apparently. But I think I've almost convinced Morten on this particular point. And then the last point here is seek help. We have what self-titled Markup Marines. And these are guys who are willing to help you, really. If you come into Pound Drupal Design and ask for help, you can get some volunteers to help you with the actual HTML that you put in your markup. And it's certainly a lot better. You're going to get great. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that. But if you did that, you would get so many kudos. They would totally respect you. Even if you later screw up something, they're like, oh, that's okay. We'll help you fix it. They'll be pretty damn happy. So Morten and I have sort of different styles for how we like to share the love. But I think if you sort of follow these general guidelines, that we're both going to be pretty damn happy about it. So that's basically it as far as I have. I have a hell of a lot more that I could teach you. I'm in the process of writing a couple of chapters for with some other people for it's a Drupal 7 module development. What's the name of the book? Drupal 7 module development. Okay, I got it right. But it's by Pack Publishing. We're finishing up the last couple chapters, and I mean, all of these slides came directly from the chapters, the two chapters that I wrote. And if there are more questions, raise your hand right now, please. Yeah, there is, but that's a hell of a lot of work, really. I know that there. Well, I mean, yeah. So in D7, there's something that we got in which makes that particular problem pretty easy, because a lot of time, often, theme hooks will have sort of wrapping containers of some kind, like a table tag or a div tag. There is a classes_array variable which is just an array of class names, right, for each theme hook. And you could, the module can provide whatever default classes it wants for the wrapper. And other people can go in and just add things onto the end of that array, and then Drupal magically sort of at the end smushes that down into a single string with spaces in between each class called, called class, $sign class. The first function is, or the first variable is called class underscore array, not classes underscore class. It's either class array or classes array. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, that's an issue that's relatively easy to solve. And if you open an issue on that module and say, can we make this small change? You know, that's relatively easy to do. So, other questions, Larry? So the question was, what's my opinion on loading data inside theme functions, inside preprocessed functions versus passing it in as parameters, or? Yeah. So. Well, here's the thing: is that sometimes data has to be generated before you call the theme function, just because of your business logic. It's easy; you already have it right there, so pass it in as a parameter. That's easy. Sometimes the data that the theme function needs kind of is calculated based on the data that you've already calculated. So it's kind of use your best judgment on whether you should calculate it first and then call it, make it another variable, or do it inside a preprocessed function and make it another variable there. I'm kind of up in the air as far as which is better, because they seem roughly the same to me. And the thing is that other modules, preprocessed functions, are called after both of those things happen, right? After the parameters pass and after the module creates these additional variables inside its template underscore preprocessed function. So the other modules are altering stuff after both of those things happen, so it doesn't really matter where it happens. So I don't really care. That's my opinion. When is the book going to be available? The book has been pushed back a little bit because Drupal 7 has been pushed back a little bit. You know, we're writing chapters of where there's like active patches for different things to fix. So I think we've got like maybe 2 chapters left to write or something like that, or. Yeah, I think it's Larry and my fault that it's not out yet, basically. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So don't expect it to come out before Drupal 7 comes out, and then see Dries' earlier slide when Drupal 7 comes out. Hell yes. The question was, is it bad to use a PHP include inside a template file? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what? Yeah, that's actually what I was going to suggest, is that we've had this same issue where, like, we're working on a site and the particular organization has like this corporate legacy systems, and these are the include files that thou shalt use at the beginning and ending of your page. Um, so hopefully they don't have like the entire head in HTML head or the doc type in it. But if they do, just strip it out and make a new include. And instead of including it directly, you can use a preprocess function to pull it in as a variable and then pass it into your regular Drupal template. Excellent. Okay.
I had a question about security of the theme layer. Certainly in Drupal 6, I've seen a lot of theme functions before in various places that are calling like text filtering, like filter XSS inside the theme function. I'm wondering kind of what the current status of that is in Drupal 7. Where is a good place to do that if users apply text?
That's a fantastic question. The question was, what are the security implications of different things, and what are the best practices for using like Drupal XSS, one of those filter XSS functions which sort of escape different possible attack mechanisms on variables that eventually get printed and sent out to the screen. And the answer is that I don't know. I'm not really that good at it. I know the theme layer, but I don't really know yeah, I know. I usually ask Larry those kind of things. And there are a lot of people in Pound Drupal that know the answer to that. So, yeah. Back there. I didn't quite catch all that. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Object-oriented, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I got it now. So the question was, in D7 we've got a lot of new object-oriented, or some object-oriented code, and why aren't we using sort of theme decorator stuff in the theme layer? And the object-oriented stuff is pretty new. And have you already given your object-oriented talk yet? Crap. So so it's relative. Object-oriented code is very new for the Drupal community, and we're sort of still figuring stuff out, really. And we want to do it the right way, and Larry's going to make sure that we do it the right way. And a decorator class sounds okay, but I'm going to, we'll look at it. And that's, right now we're thinking about, what do we want to do? And it's crazy because a lot of you haven't even seen D7, but we're already thinking, okay, what are we going to do for D8 to enhance and improve the theme layer and get rid of some of these silly naming conventions that are confusing. So, yeah. Other questions? Back there. Sorry, so let me answer the first part of that first, and then I'll go back to you for the second part, because somebody outside started talking, so I already started overlapping you. The first question was, how hard is it to migrate your site, theming-wise or module-wise, from D6 to D7? There is an upgrade guide. It's Drupal.org/update/6/7, I think, is what it's the URL or something like that. But you can find it on Drupal.org that it is literally a huge long list of things that you need to do is sort of to upgrade the code the custom code that you've written, or if you're a module developer, the module that you've written to the next version of Drupal. And we're going through that right now and making sure we didn't miss anything. There are issues in the queue that are marked as need documentation because we've made a change and we got to document this, or we're going to totally hose everybody if we don't finish writing the docs for it. So with module development, besides the gigantic long list of just sort of chronologically what have we done since the last version of Drupal, there's also a list that's been sort of categorized. So there are categories of things, like when you're touching the database, these are some things that have changed. And when you're doing this little bit, and then there's a whole other page, a whole other section just for themes. And then the second part. Sorry, I just didn't quite hear the last part again. There's bleed over from the hallway. Yeah. Which to recommend? Well, I mean, right. So the good news is that in Drupal 6, the split of which should you implement, either a theme function or a template. That decision is exactly the same in D7 as it in D6. There's not really any differences. So Larry's going like this. Is it a comment about this? Okay. Yeah, that is one point. So yeah, in D7 you can have pre-processed functions so that other people can sort of modify your variables before the actual theme function is called. In D6, you don't get any pre-processed functions for theme functions. So if you want to allow other modules to modify the variables before they're run inside of D6, your templates are your only really good way, unless you like add a special case alter hook before you call your theme function, sort of thing. So I guess that would be the only caveat as which way should you go, templates versus functions. So, but basically either of those things work the same way in D7, except for this note. Well, the thing is actually with your theme hook, or that's why I hate this. Your hook theme function, that when it gets upgraded to D7 is changed slightly, but the basic idea is the same. And theme functions themselves, I mean, the naming convention is very similar. It's just that in D7, when you have a theme function, you only get one parameter, which is all of the variables for your theme function. So you can't, like in D6, you would have a theme function that could take multiple parameters, and those would be individual variables. And in D7, you get one parameter, which is a variables, which is a keyed array of your individual variables. So that's the only sort of major upgrade, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not too bad. So, any other questions? Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. And I'll be around the next 2 days, and come find me if you have other questions.